All right, moving on to Philly Celtics, which has been a massive surprise in terms of we did not see this 3-0 coming. At the moment, it's 3-1. Obviously, the game 5 will be played tomorrow. The thing is, even though this was 3-0 and now 3-1, this could very easily have been 3-1 to Philly, and it really should be 2-2.
Feels so competitive.
It does feel really competitive. It's probably been the best second-round series for sure, especially with some of the rivalry and Embiid. And we know Rozier likes to get up in everyone's face, Marcus Smart, Simmons, all of that. The first game was a bit of a gut punch for the Philly, a bit of a reality check. Hey, we're not versing Miami anymore. We're versing Brad Stevens, and this is the best defense in the league. And these guys can all switch, and they can basically, outside of Shane Larkin, but they're all good defenders, which is something they hadn't faced for quite a while. Not just the Heat, but their run home. They hadn't versed premium defensive teams. But then game 2, they were up by 22 points on the Celtics home floor. And Brett Brown made some interesting decisions, didn't call a timeout when they were making their massive run, took TJ McConnell out to bring Simmons back in, and Simmons had an awful game.
So do you put that on Brown or on Simmons?
I don't know. It's a tricky one. That was probably his worst game ever. Actually, no, sorry. That was in game 3. He had the stinker, I think. That was, He had the 1 point in game 3. So game 2, sorry, that's my bad. But yeah, to be perfectly honest, we're going to get to TJ later, but this has been a pretty eye-opening series for Simmons. I think we've wanted to see this whole time, how will you go when teams can game plan for you in a 7-game series? And yes, he survived the Heat, but against the best defense in the league and probably one of the smartest coaches in the league, he's been pretty solidly stymied, which is... He has been okay, but crucial turnovers, especially late in the absolute choke job of a game 3 where they threw the ball away multiple times. The confetti guy then let the confetti fall after Bellinelli hit a 2 because they thought they'd won. So, like, everything with that game was a bit over the top, ridiculous, embarrassing. And then some of the play calling by Brad Stevens down the stretch to get Brown a layup and Horford a layup on Covington is just insanely good. But Simmons has had a bit of an eye-opening series. They did recover in game 4, which we'll get to later. But I just wanted to talk about, to start with, what has been... Because Philly, after that first-round series against the Heat, I think in the betting streaks or whatever, which is stupid, don't bet. But anyway, in the betting streaks, the betting was that they were the favourite to come out of the East.
Yeah.
And right now, like, down 3-0, where did it go wrong? And a lot of it is the Brad Stevens blueprint for A, being a ridiculously good coach, but B, how they're slowing this team down. I think the number one thing, they've slowed the pace down. Philly played the 4th highest pace over the regular season. We know how quick they like to play, especially with Simmons in the fast break. That's pretty much when he's at his best. And they played at the highest pace of any team in the first round versus the Heat. That's seen a massive drop-off versus Celtics. They're down the bottom when it comes to pace ratings. And then they've defended Embiid quite well. He hasn't been bad, but Baines has been hitting corner threes. Horford, what they've done is they've dragged him out of the paint. So they've forced him to honour Horford and Baines. Even if Baines doesn't, he's made 6 of the 14 he's taken. Horford's taken 8. But Embiid's one of the best shot blockers in the league. He averaged just under 2 blocks per game in the regular season, which was 5th in the league. And he had just under 2 blocks versus the Heat. He's averaging half a block a game against the Celtics.
He's been
so
tough.
they've dragged him out of the paint, forced him to defend these really guys he shouldn't need to be defending on the perimeter, and Baines, who didn't even shoot a 3 till this year, and now suddenly he's taking every open 3 he gets, which is just a little bit funny to see, but he is making them. And Embiid does look a bit tired, which isn't a surprise considering like he wasn't even playing back-to-backs earlier this year. But in game 2, Horford drove past him to seal it with the layup. He was out on the perimeter and just drove right past him. And it's just like, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Embiid should not just get outrun to the basket comfortably and turn the corner as well by Horford.
Even if you get in front of him and just foul him, it's better than getting a layup like that.
Yeah. I just think that he definitely looks a little bit tired, and that mask is still obviously irritating him. Makes that pretty clear. But it's also Stevens' play calling as well. Those we talked about, the two shots they got at the end of game 3, which they got switches where they got Embiid out on the perimeter, and then you had Jaylen Brown on Ilyasova at the rim, and then Horford on Covington at the rim. That's just masterful play calling, which not necessarily Embiid's fault, but still, it's just the way they've been able to get him away from it. And then the three ball, which we talked about. If the threes aren't falling for Philly, they don't look that convincing.
Yeah, that was game one, right, where they couldn't land a
5
shot.
of 26.
And we thought, okay, they're not going to shoot that bad the whole series, but
yeah. So they did recover a bit.
Dreadful.
They were 39% in game 2, 30% in game 3, 27% in game 4. So that doesn't mean as drastic as the 19% in game 1. But the Bellinelli and the Ilyasova bubble, has that burst a little bit? They haven't been great.
Yeah, almost. And it's kind of a matter of, like, there's so many those role players, 3-point shooters, and
who can cover onto them. And
I guess they're an interesting breed of player, because I think Houston have got a lot of those players that are those kind of just pop up a couple of threes. And
but
Ilyasova
the
can play a bit of
Houston's
defense.
ones take such stupid shots, like Bellinelli's shot selection. I don't think Houston takes those kind of terrible shots.
I think it's more they're getting real open shots and they're catch and shoot players, whereas Bellinelli's running off a lot of screens.
Bellinelli likes
a lot
to
of
run
screens.
And Houston have the threat of Paul and Harden.
Yeah.
Philly
it's
do
a bit of
not
an
have that.
unfair comparison. But in terms of, and just the numbers wise, so Bellinelli was shooting 37% from 3 versus the Heat, averaging 16 points per game over that series, 32% and 11 points per game in this one. But Ilyasova, 35% from 3 and 11 points per game versus the Heat, 18% from 3 and just 7 points per game in this one. So they're both seeing a fall off. Redick's been the one constant. He had a bad game 4, but otherwise he's been really good, which he's done his entire career. He's just a marksman. He was everywhere he's been. Covington, not great.
No.
Bumped out of the starting lineup in game 4, which McConnell was fantastic, but Covington again. Covington just likes to grab the ball, wait till the defender gets right up in his grill, and then shoot the contested 3 over his face. I don't understand. Like, his shots, Bellinelli's is awful because he takes ones that are like half leaning sideways. Like, you literally see him doing the shot and it's like, what are you doing? Yeah. Where the Covington just seems to want the guy to come towards him before he shoots it.
It's a bit of a weird one, because it's just they just need to know their place and know their shots to take and know like what they have to do to get the team a win, but they kind of just want to take these shots and look like the cool guy.
Yeah,
and
they do like their big
complete
moment
opposite
3.
of Boston.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're all part of the system, and that system's working perfectly. But then, game 4. Now, a couple of changes. TJ into the starting lineup. He had 19 points, 5 assists, 7 boards, and 9 of 12 shooting in 39 minutes. So it's not the headline we expected to see.
Yeah.
TJ McConnell saves Philly.
Drags Philly
out of the sweep while Embiid and Simmons sit. But he looks really balanced and under control. He was getting to the rim, which is the other big change. They got to the rim. They stopped settling for those threes. They scored 52 points in the paints, which was their most for the series. Saric as well is a perfect example. He was really struggling with his outside shot over those first 3. He started to just going straight into that paint, sealing off. He had 25 points despite only hitting 1 shot from 3. So it just shows how many around the rim he was able to get. Now, yes, they were down 3-0. Yes, it is still 3-1. Yes, the current record for every team that was up 3-0 is 129-0. It's never been done before.
Maybe at 3-1.
3-1 had never been done before at one point. And the thing is that 129-0, at one point, there will be a 1 added to the other column. Yeah. It's going to be done eventually. This whole, it can't happen because it's 129-0, it's just rubbish. It's sport. This is why we play sport, because anything can happen.
That's exactly what Chris Paul said.
Yeah,
when he was asked after the game.
He knows.
Are you thinking about the conference finals? He's like, no.
With a few expletives as well. But, so the chances are that Celtics are probably going to close it out in Game 5. That's my tip. I think they'll win in Game 5, simply because that Philly made a lot of changes in Game 4, especially with the way they're attacking the paint. Yeah. But I trust Brad Stevens more than I trust Brett Brown to adapt to that and change the way they defended it. It's still the best defense in the league. I think they'll win Game 5. But in saying that, if there is going to be a team that comes back and wins and puts the 1 next to the 129, I think this is one of the best chances there would probably be because they have the best player on the court. They really should be winning. In my opinion, this series should at least be equal.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's very unlikely, but I'm not giving up on my Philly bandwagon.
I would love it, and simply because
Can you
of
imagine
Marcus.
Game 7?
Did you see Marcus Morris in Game 4?
3-0.
The 3-0 against Embiid.
3-0.
And it's like that's the stuff you've got to like cut out when it's like Chris Paul talking about it after the game. It's like you can't think about the record. You can't think about the next round. Think about what's going on right now. And they lost that game. And if they managed to lose this series,
can you imagine the trash talk in Game 7?
Morris is going to cop it. Not just from
Every
Philadelphia,
single
but from
Philadelphian,
the NBA fans all around the world, because you can't go bragging about 3-0 and then
if you're up 20 in Game 4, but if it's a close game,
I hope it happens just for the sake of one of the greatest divisional rivalries we'll see created.
Finally.
Because these are the two teams that are going to be there in the next 5 years. I want to see them go.
And they have so much history. We know they've showed it before every broadcast. Julius Erving, Larry Bird, all these guys, they've played in so many playoff series, but it's been quite a while since we've got that rivalry renewed. And these two teams look like, especially if LeBron does leave the East, they look like two teams which are going to be set to be 1 and 2 in the East for quite a while. And they're going to be a pretty good 1 and 2 because as much as Philly's impressive, they don't have their best two players and they have the chance to add more. Sorry, as much as the Celtics have been impressive, I should say.